It would have been a lot more badass if he would have came out with his WCW entrance music. That would have been really cool. Like I said, the new music is kind of weird to me, but it's just how WWE like presented him. I think they just wanted him back for nostalgia act. I don't think that.
Isn't that the biggest reason why they want all of their part-timers back? Is for the nostalgia feel and some extra ratings, or some ratings period.
They really wanted to take him serious because he didn't have that many matches, and he didn't win that many matches. He lost to Triple H. He lost to Seth Rollins at Night of Champions. He beat Big Show on Raw, and then he had a tag team.
That was the tag match. It was originally Sting versus Big Show 1-on-1, and then a bunch of shit happened, a bunch of interference, right? And then it became a tag match because Cena interfered, or not Cena interfered. I believe Seth Rollins interfered, because at that point I believe it was already announced that Sting was going to face Rollins for the title. Then again, it might not have been. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure Seth had came out and interfered, and then Cena came out to counter that, and then it became a tag match. One of you peeps can correct me if I'm wrong, though.
Match, I believe so too, with Seth and Kane, and I think his tag team partner might have been John Cena. See, I'm going off my head of what I remember.
I don't recall that one.
I didn't recently watch those. I only thing I recently watched was his WCW stuff and WrestleMania 31 with him going against Triple H. Like I said, those are a couple things that went wrong. Him going against Seth Rollins, that should have never happened. They should have kept that somewhere else, because if you're not gonna give Sting the WWE Championship, please do not have him go against Rollins, because I don't want, like, I didn't really want Sting to even lose any matches in the WWE. How are you gonna have a legend debut in the WWE and have him just lose matches? Like, what was the sense?
Well, Mr. Reid, to counter that, who was Sting gonna beat? And how many wrestling fans would have bitched and complained about Sting burying the new guys, all of the talent? Were we gonna? We could have easily turned Sting into Triple H by that logic of having him beat everybody. I'm just saying.
And Sting, personally, when he had interviews, he didn't give a fuck that he lost. Like, he was like, I'm just here, because, it was a now or never thing. People want to see me in WWE.
It was. And again, he was in his 50s. He was old. You can't be that old and expect to be on top. It's not going to happen. It has happened for some guys, but wrestling fans, you know the drill. You know the old tradition. You lose on your way out. That's how that goes. When Sting signed, I knew that it wasn't for the long run. I knew it was going to be a short run. I didn't think it was going to be 10 months because, he got hurt. But I didn't expect Sting to go on this insane 3, 4, 5-year run in the ring. Having classic matches with everybody, having big career-defining WrestleMania moments. I didn't expect any of that from him. I didn't. And you shouldn't have either. You, the fans, you shouldn't have either. If you did, I don't know what to tell you. You probably don't know that much about Sting if you thought that all of those things were going to happen for him.
I just had to come. That's really how his motive was, and I really think he should have had a bigger mindset on what he really could have done in the WWE. If he would have came back more scarier, not like saying Undertaker scary, but if he would have came back more scarier and looked like he really was not playing with anybody, like I'm gonna fuck with authority's head, like that would have built him up higher than he was before. How he was in the WWE to build him higher, and it's just crazy how his career.
So basically, you wanted him to have a Bray Wyatt run, except he wins all of his feuds instead of losing all of his feuds like Bray did. That's what you're telling me. That you wanted him to have a Bray Wyatt run, where he's spooky, scaring everybody, and attacking everybody, putting fear into everybody's minds and hearts, and just dominating everybody. You wanted a 55-year-old man to dominate. Okay, if you say so.
And the WWE ended, and he didn't have many matches. He had maybe 5 matches overall. I feel like he should have at least had more. This is something. This is really just a rant video. Really, I kind of didn't plan.
But why is it a rant video? We're talking about. I'm not even gonna bring up his age anymore. I can't. If you've seen all of my other videos, you would know that I don't like seeing guys, or even girls for that matter, into their 50s still wrestling. I'm not a supporter of that. I'm really not. Your time is your time, and you need to be able to step aside. I know it's not easy. I understand it's not easy, but you need to be able to step aside and let the new generation come in, because all you are doing, the only thing that you are doing, wrestling into your 50s, is you're taking away spots that could go to guys that are better than you, that are much more hungrier than you, that maybe to a point are smarter than you, that have a desire to prove themselves and want to go, and can also just wrestle. They can just do it better than you. That's all you're doing. You're just taking up their time. In all sports, it's like a gear in the machine. And I know Austin said this after he retired, when he said, I'm just a gear in the machine. You take an old gear out, you put a new one in, the machine keeps going. It never stops. It doesn't stop for anybody. Well, I don't just apply that to wrestling. I apply that to all sports. It's the same thing with all sports. You get rid of the oldie, you get rid of, the geezer. You put in a new, young, fresh, in his prime, athletic superstar, and you watch him go. And you watch him launch the sport into the next decade. Or into the next era, if you will. That's what you do. You can't keep the old gear in the same machine forever. It's just not right.
To make this video, I really just wanted to go to sleep. But this has been on my mind, and I knew if I didn't make a video about it, I would have regretted it. But Sting had a role in what the WWE was doing. What they could have done, something else they could have done, when he came back and stopped that Survivor Series stuff, boom, just have him stop the Survivor Series stuff, have him be off TV for months, and you're just wondering, Sting, Sting, stop the Authority from being on TV. When Sting's coming back? Have that thought of, when is he coming back? Have people wonder, we haven't seen Sting since Survivor Series. And then when Authority actually show back up, because John had to sacrifice, because Seth had Edge's neck on the Money in the Bank. He was going to curb stomp his ass, and he was like, if you don't bring the Authority back, I'm going to... So he brought the Authority back. Around, what would have been interesting is months later, they did that, and then John brings back the Authority. That's when Sting pops up. They kind of just went another direction. Let me know down below what should have WWE done with Sting's run. What had WWE done with Sting's run? I feel personally they should have done better. It was awful. I'm not saying like 6 seconds.
It was not awful. Okay. It was not awful. Let me tell you runs that were awful. Goldberg's run in 03 to 04 was awful. Who else? Kevin Nash's run in 2011 was awful. And you could even argue his run in 03 and 04 was awful as well. Those were awful runs. Bret Hart's run in WCW from 97 to 2000, or 97 to late 99, because that's when he had the injury against Goldberg. You could say that run was awful, even though he was still pretty successful. But it was like it didn't feel the same. Like it didn't feel like this is Bret Hart, the guy. Even though he was past his prime too. So I don't know what the hell anybody expected, but those were awful runs. David Sammartino's run in the WWF was awful. Those are awful runs. Sting's run wasn't awful. It might have been underwhelming, but to say it was awful, that would be unfair. The man was in his 50s. I don't know what... There wasn't much that they could milk out of him. I mean, come on. And he still has a contract with them. He's there as a representative now. So he still represents the company, and he goes to the Comic-Cons and things of that nature. So I don't know. It was underwhelming, and it abruptly ended. But to say that it was awful compared to the other runs that I've just named, that's stretching it a bit.
Goldberg beat Brock Lesnar type thing awful, as in they should have taken better care of his role, made him look. They should have made.
Wait, did he just say Goldberg beating Brock Lesnar was awful? Is he talking about their WrestleMania 20 match or their Survivor Series 2016 match? Because I don't know if he's talking about the Survivor Series match. Why are people still shitting on that? That match served a greater purpose, and it led to the great match that they had, the only great match that they had against each other at WrestleMania 33. So why are we still complaining about that? Why is that still an issue? I'm just asking. Just curiously asking, why is that still an issue? And he's not the only one that I've heard still talk about that being quote-unquote awful. I've heard many other freaking analysts and podcasters say the same thing. Still to this day. Now, if that hadn't led to the WrestleMania 33 that we got between Goldberg and Lesnar, then, okay, you could say, oh, that was shit. But it wasn't shit. It was actually a good thing. It was good because it made Brock look beatable, which he hadn't been in a long time. It made Brock look, for the first time, it seemed like he was worried. He had little doubts, and you, as the viewer, you had little doubts about whether Brock could still be this unstoppable force that he had essentially been his entire career. And it put fear and doubt into Paul Heyman's mind. So just that storyline, it worked. It worked. And for once, you kind of had a little bit of sympathy for Brock. Just a little bit. Not much, but a little bit. But we all knew Brock was eventually going to get his win back. It was just a matter of time. But it made for, I don't want to say a perfect story, but it made for a solid story between the two. I don't know how you could possibly not like that outcome. Like the overall outcome, looking at it in retrospect, it worked. It made sense for the story that they were trying to tell. And it was solid. And it led to the best match that they had against each other. And one of the best matches on that show at WrestleMania 33.
Look strong. They should have made him Roman Reigns strong in this feud, but they didn't.
55. Just gonna say that again. 55.
And if he would have never feuded with Seth, he could have had bigger feuds with other people, like bigger stars. We could have seen Roman versus Sting. We could have seen Dean versus Sting. I know we...
And Sting would have lost them all. So this whole thing of Sting being dominant and killing everybody, he would have lost all of those feuds. let's say he didn't feud with Seth, he still would have lost all of the other feuds. You really think they were going to have Sting beat Roman? You really think they were going to have Sting beat Dean? I mean, it's a possibility because they never really fucked with Dean like that, and it still shows to this day, but still, come on now. And at the time, Dean was still very on fire as a babyface at that point in time. So you really think they were going to let... You could argue that Dean was more over than Sting at that time. So Sting wouldn't have won any of those feuds. So what would have really come of that? What would have been the outcome of all of that stuff? Say, had he not feuded with Seth. Oh, he wouldn't have gotten hurt? That's all you could say. He just wouldn't have gotten hurt. Or he wouldn't have gotten hurt as soon as he did. But other than that, he would have lost all of those feuds.
I've seen Seth versus Sting anyways, but I feel like we should have saw it later on, you know. Only time we can ever see Sting in the WWE ring again is probably through the video game. I don't think he will ever show up again unless it's for like commercials or things like that, or a children's book. I don't see Sting coming back to the WWE ring anytime soon unless WWE is like, if you're fully medically cleared, you can come back. I would like to see him fight Triple H in a rematch.
No. Mr. Reid, sir, with all due respect, sir, for real, you would like to see Sting, after what happened to Triple H at Crown Jewel, you're going to tell me that you really want to see Sting and Triple H again? Triple H is going to be 50 in, I believe, July. I think July 27th to be exact. Sting is going to be 60 around March. So 50-year-old man versus a 60-year-old man. Nah. Not me. You couldn't even pay me to watch that. You could not, no money in the world, you couldn't pay me to watch that match. You couldn't pay me to watch that match. If they were to have that match, it would have to be shorter than Goldberg and Brock was at Survivor Series 2016. It would have to be no more than 2 minutes. I mean, come on, let's be serious here now. You know, I'm starting to think, Mr. Reid, that you didn't see Sting's TNA run. Because I feel like if you saw Sting's TNA run, you would agree with at least half of the shit that I've said in this video, in these 2 videos so far. You would agree with half of the shit that I've said about Sting. Did you see his TNA run in the last, I'd say, year and a half to 2 years where he came out wrestling in his t-shirt? I doubt that you saw that, Mr. Reid. Because if you saw that, you wouldn't have said half of the shit that you've said in this video. Keeping it 100.
But at that point, it would be pointless because Triple H already won. So authority, we own WCW. That's the only main reason I think that they had Triple H go over Sting, was because they didn't want WCW to look like it was on top. When technically it can't really be on top when WCW is dead. But
agreed. So that's the only part of that theory, that number one theory behind it, that makes absolutely no fucking sense whatsoever.
You know how WWE be like, oh my gosh, a WCW superstar beat a WWE superstar. Like, that's how they probably would have it. That's probably the mindset that they had, was like, we don't need that type of vibe. But like I said, let me know down below, what do you think they should have done with Sting in the WWE that would have been a lot different? Like I said, you already know my reasons. Let me know you down below.
Alright, so that is it. It was very, very interesting to hear Mr. Isaac Reid's thoughts on Sting's run in the WWE in 2015. This is probably the first in-depth analysis that I've heard anybody on YouTube give in terms of Sting's run in the WWE, that 10-month run he had from Survivor Series 2014 to Night of Champions 2015. So this was interesting. Props and respects to Mr. Isaac Reid for giving this analysis. He actually made some good points. He had some ideas, but like I said before, I feel like he didn't see Sting's TNA run, especially the last 2 years of Sting's TNA run, and I am surprised he didn't bring up Undertaker, because that was the number one match that should have happened. Fuck Roman Reigns, fuck Dean Ambrose, and I mean fuck those feuds, not fuck the people, but fuck those feuds. Sting and Undertaker should have been the first thing on their minds when Sting finally signed. Bray Wyatt, looking back in retrospect, Bray's feud with Taker really did nothing for him. Like, it's good on his, quote-unquote resume. Like, he feuded with Undertaker, but, I mean, it looked good on Giant Gonzalez's resume, too, and look where he went. Nowhere. He was gone from the company within, a year? So, I mean, come on. Like, what are we saying when we say it looks good on his resume? What are we really thinking about when we say these things? That it's a good rub, quote-unquote. What are we saying? DDP feuded with Undertaker, and look what happened to him. Is that a good thing to say on his resume? No, because people want to fucking forget about DDP feuding with The Undertaker and being Sarah's stalker. People want to forget about that shit. So feuding with The Undertaker is not always a good thing. It's not. It's not. It's a good thing on paper for everybody, but in terms of execution and the match, no. And at this point, it is definitely not good to feud with Undertaker, because most likely you will lose. Unless you're Brock Lesnar or Roman Reigns. And what does that do for you, losing to a 50-plus-year-old man who should have retired years ago? Who is literally, He's literally, going back on his word of what he said back in, I believe it was either 02 or 03 when he did Off the Record, about how he said he didn't want to be one of these old timers, washed up, can't move anymore, still trying to reach past glory. Well, look who's doing that now. Look who's doing that now. It's very hypocritical. Look, Taker's an all-time great. Greatest giant of all time. Definitely in my top 10. But let's be real. He's literally going back on his own word, and he's contradicting everything that he said in that video. In that interview. Back in 02. And mind you, he was 37 at the time of that interview. So he was already past his prime. At least athletically. Even though he was much smarter. So, I'm out.